As I record this, we are still very much in the midst of a pandemic. We've become used to this invisible virus which is spreading throughout the world, and we have to take precautions to make sure we do not get the virus. Well, long before the pandemic, there is another virus that is eating us from the inside, and that is called imposter syndrome. Today, we're going to explore how do you know if you have imposter syndrome. If you feel at some time or another that the success that you've achieved in life has come because of luck or because it is undeserved, then stay tuned, because you might be surprised to know that almost 70% of people at some time in their lives have imposter syndrome. Today we're going to explore 6 phrases that clearly indicate that you might have imposter syndrome. Stay tuned at the end, because I want to give you details of a special course that we've put together which will go into much more depth and offer practical resources on how to deal with imposter syndrome. I recently released my first book, Leadership Lessons from the Pub. And about 3 days before I released the book, I had a huge attack of imposter syndrome. I began to worry about what people would think about the book. I began to worry that really this book was useless, that people would really not find it helpful. And what's more is that people would tell me that really the book's just a little too basic and you could have done better. Now, that is a classic form of imposter syndrome. I'd spent countless hours researching for this book. I had spent countless hours trying to make the book practical. I had interviewed people. I'd listened to people. And so I knew that the book was going to be very well received, but at that moment, I had this anxiety. So today we're going to explore imposter syndrome, and we're going to explore specifically 6 phrases. And if you hear yourself saying this to yourself, it's probably a good indication that you are suffering from some form of imposter syndrome. So it's important to ask, what is imposter syndrome? Well, imposter syndrome is the experience of intense feelings that achievements are undeserved, and also a concern of being exposed as a fraud. So that definition is really interesting. And the way perhaps that we might begin to notice imposter syndrome in our lives is through the use of certain phrases. So let's explore 6 of the most popular phrases you might hear from people who have imposter syndrome. The first is, I'm a fake, I'm going to be found out. This is kind of like the fairy tale we all heard when we were young about the emperor's new clothes. Here we have the emperor who was conned into thinking that his new clothes were beautiful, but in reality there were no clothes. And in many ways, people with imposter syndrome kind of feel that nakedness as well, that they're going to be found out, that in some way someone is going to point the finger and say, you know what, you don't have any clothes, that there's no depth to you, that really what you're communicating is not of value. And so feeling that fake, feeling that in some ways what I'm offering is unimportant is a classic sign of imposter syndrome. The second phrase is, I looked out. That's really putting success down to luckiness rather than to all the effort, rather than to all the studies. You know, I was dealing with a client a few weeks ago who was using this phrase. And I asked her to really reflect on our lives. Here was a person before me who had 2 master's degrees, a doctorate, and also had spent many years of study and preparation. And I said to her, none of this is about luck. This is all about your hard work and your dedication. The third phrase you might hear is, well, if I can do it, anyone can. And of course, that's discounting the uniqueness of yourself and what you bring. So basically, you are discounting your own wisdom, your technical abilities, and really saying, you know, well, anyone could do this. This is nothing special. And that's a real sign of potential imposter syndrome. The fourth phrase you might hear is, well, they're just being nice. And so really what's happening there is you're discounting what you have done by really saying that people are just being kind and nice. They're saying nice things. What I did really is not important. Now, perhaps you have had the ability to create a nice relationship, and perhaps people are being nice to you because they enjoy your company. But you should never discount what you have done, discount your experience, discount your wisdom, just down to the fact that people are being nice. People perhaps are being nice because they're responding and are impressed to how you're showing up and to the wisdom you're sharing. Before we move on to the fifth phrase, if you're enjoying the content today, I invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, to hit the bell as well, and you will be reminded of new episodes. Each week, I come out with a new episode which explores areas of emotional intelligence that will help us both at work and at home. So subscribe and click the bell. The fifth phrase is failure is not an option. One of the things that research shows about people who are living with imposter syndrome is this ability to constantly try and reach perfection. That they're always striving, they're always looking for perfection. Of course, perfection is an illusion. And so one of that drive is to make sure that they do not fail. And so when you produce something perhaps that other people see perfectly acceptable, a person with imposter syndrome can always point out things that are wrong, and constantly they are diminishing the work that they have done. And the final phrase perhaps that you will hear very often from people with imposter syndrome is, there's no way I can compete with them. What happens, of course, is that we look with envy at other people. And all of a sudden we get mesmerized by what they are doing. And then we start comparing ourselves with them. And then we start diminishing ourselves in light of what we've seen in them. Now, of course, some of this is normal. Sometimes we do absolutely get into comparison with other people. But for a person with imposter syndrome, this can be debilitating. This can actually put a barrier between us doing something and actually shutting things down because we think we can never compete with that other person. So there you have it today. 6 phrases that people with imposter syndrome constantly use. I know in my own life I have used many of them, and perhaps, I still do at times. And here's what's important about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is something that we begin to recognize and something we begin to manage in our lives. It doesn't have to manage us. Now, if you've liked the content today and perhaps you would like to explore imposter syndrome at a much deeper level, then I invite you perhaps to think about signing up for a new course which I've developed with my colleague Laura Scarf. And it's all about imposter syndrome, recognizing it in our lives, and also developing strategies to overcome it. You can find more details on the course below, and as well you'll find a promo offer which will give you a discount on the course. Now, if you've enjoyed the episode today, I also invite you to watch the next episode, which will explore imposter syndrome and some strategies that we can use to overcome it.